Hi everyone. So I said I would be posting a video about kind of what my process to prepare for the VABC was. There's a couple of resources that I feel are very, very important. For one, reading the candidate manual. So the candidate manual is really going to go over all of the different portions of the exam. It's very broad. It's just kind of giving you the different topics that are going to be covered. But I'll tell you what I think led to my success. The first thing was I took the exam really seriously. I usually tend to take certification exams really seriously. And I have this mindset of where when I look at a certification, I pursue these certifications because I think that they make me a better infection preventionist because it makes me more well-rounded and helps me understand something else that's really important in my field. As an IP, you're expected to basically be an expert in so many different areas that it's hard. It's hard to be able to say, yes, I'm an expert in sterile processing and vascular access and behavioral health and whatever else there is, management, communication, all of that good stuff. So for me, I like to focus some of my attention on those things that I'm weak in. Sterile processing was a weakness of mine, so I pursued my CRCST and succeeded. And then another thing that has been bugging me for the almost 3 years I've been in IP was my lack of understanding for vascular access, which is what pushed me to pursue the certification. So, reading over the candidate handbook, you'll learn that the VABC is a certification that's open not only to clinicians. That's also another point, basically, of interest, especially if you are a non-nurse infection preventionist, which I fall under that category. I have an MPH, so my master's in public health. I don't have a license of any kind, so I'm not clinical. And the Vascular Access Certification Board made it so that educators, IPs, LPNs, etc., a wide variety of people can sit for the certification. So first thing is going to be Kay Coulter's program. So there's this thing called Infusion Knowledge Incorporated, which is led by Kay Coulter, who's a CRNI and who also has her VABC. And this course is expensive. It's online and it is a little bit dated. Dated is in the sense that the platform that she uses, I feel like could be a little bit more friendly and be brought more into 2021. But regardless, it's worth it. I can't tell you how many hours of content it is. It's maybe like 14 hours. It might be more than that. I honestly don't even, I don't have the total for it, but I mean, it is a lot. So it's a ton of content. This is the book. You can see I have it divided out into all the different sections. It's 1 through 9. It's going to cover a bunch of stuff. It's fill in the blank. So as you watch her videos, you can basically go in and fill in the stuff. She also has a ton of like recommended readings. Like she's got literally like a whole thing of these are papers that I recommend that you read. And she tells you basically what her recommendations are for you to read. As far as my studying, we started studying on April 4th, and we sat for our test on June 21st. And it was intense. I mean, I'm talking about it was studying multiple times a week, 2 hours after work, 6 hours on the weekends, sometimes just 6 hours on one day alone. I had this notebook, which I used to set up all of our different like study sessions. This is my countdown page. So this, like, as the test got closer, I would cross off how many days were left before the test. And obviously I had a lot of really like good things. Like, it's not always easy, but it's worth it. You've got this. Never give up. Like, you know, those kind of positive reinforcement or whatever. But yeah, okay, so first thing I recommend is if you are non-clinical and you're going to need help with some of those clinical concepts, I know it's money. I know it's expensive, but when I sign up for a certification, I think about it like I'm signing up for a college course, a graduate level course. A graduate level course can cost anywhere between $1,400 upwards to $3,000 depending on the university that you go to. So I already know that I need to put in some money and effort to be able to do well in it. So that's the way I think about it. And it's not just that, it's the knowledge that you gain that's going to help you help your facility and help your patients. Like it doesn't matter. It's worth it. So recommend that. Read all of this. Read this entire thing, cover to cover. This is the INS standards. It's the Infusion Therapy Standards of Practice, the 8th edition. I paid for the online PDF of it, printed it out at work, went to Staples, and got it spiraled at Staples. Vessel Health and Preservation is, I did not read this whole thing. I actually read only like the first 2 chapters of this, and it had some good information, but you don't need this one. That one you do not need. The Kidney Disease Outcomes and Quality Initiative. This one's really good. Now, I didn't read all of this, but I feel like I read enough to where I started to understand our kidney patients better, which is extremely helpful. It has been extremely helpful, especially for those really difficult patients that you get in the intensive care unit. It has helped me be able to explain the concept of vessel health and preservation to staff members and to have those discussions. I feel like when I go through a chart, I do it with like a more of a critical eye. I'm not just looking at meds alone. I'm looking at histories. I'm able to like help better assess what other options are for patients, which is really great because now I can come to the VAS team and say, hey, I looked at this chart. What do you think? This is what's going on. And it's not as simple. It's more simple that way. The Manual Therapeutics. So this is another really great resource. I did not read all of it. I read the first 3 chapters of this book, and I personally felt like it had really good information. What you'll start to notice as you continuously read all of these different guidelines and topics is that they overlap and they have a lot of similarities. So yeah, this is the CDC guidelines. I also printed these out and took them to Staples to get spiraled. I like to highlight, I like to write, I mean colors, I enjoy highlighting, doing stuff with colors, so it's just what I wanted to do. You don't have to do that. For some of you, you may be able to just read it off the web page and be okay with it, but that's what I like to do when I study, so you have to know your study styles. And these are all of the papers that I read in preparation for it. And these were obviously all papers that were recommended by Kay Coulter herself in her training program. Okay, these other 2 resources. So I use this intermittently to look up drugs and to learn a little bit more about them. I would say this is probably a resource I still recommend. You don't have to get it, but it's good. You can, if you have questions, it's easier sometimes to just be able to read more about those common drugs that you continuously see, like in your intensive care units, etc. It's a lot easier for some of our IPs who are nurses who have a history of working like in the ICU because they've ran those drips, they've done that stuff. For people like me, it's a little bit more difficult and it takes more time to study, but it doesn't mean it's not worth it. So this is Plummer's Principles and Practice of Infusion Therapy. I bought this one because it was highly recommended, but I actually didn't use it to prepare for my test. It's still one of the books that I want to read, but I didn't use it to prepare for my test. So all in all, to summarize, CDC Guidelines, you have to read this. I recommend reading through some of those papers that Kate Coulter, recommends. The Kidney Disease Outcomes Quality Initiative is a very good document to be familiar with, to be acquainted with. It will provide you with a lot of really good information to be able to help your kidney patients. This, you have to read it. Like, there's just no way around it. So much of the content from the exam comes from your INS standards. And you should know the standards. I mean, obviously, I don't have this entire book memorized, all right? I'm not, like, who am I? I don't have photographic memory. Like, I don't remember all of this. But I know generally, okay, I know I've read this or I've found this somewhere, and I can typically compartmentalize it and put it in a little box and know where I have to go back to find it for when I need the resource. Can't recommend Kate Coulter enough. Big fan of her work. I think she did a good job of explaining a lot of things. But it's not enough. So this is what I always say, you get out what you put in. It's not enough to just sit there and go through her videos. When you don't understand concepts that she's talking about, you have to do a deeper dive. You have to look more into it. You have to read about it. I watched a lot of YouTube videos, and one resource that I think you need to really pay a lot of attention to is the AVA guide. And the AVA guide is something that you buy through AVA, and it's a guide online. I think you can buy it. You can buy it in a paper copy as well, but when I tried to buy the paper copy, they didn't have it available, so I could only do the online option. So that's another resource. I would say use the AVA guide as one of your guiding documents to prepare for the exam. That's about it. I think that's all I have. So the rest of the video is just going to be like random shots of us studying or me preparing or me talking to the VAS team and test day, and I guess have fun. Let me know if you have any questions. Alright guys, so I'm here with Dave. He's our VAS team nurse extraordinaire, and he's helping me prepare for my VABC. So what would you like to tell the people?
It's a challenging exam.
You think I'm gonna pass?
Absolutely.
Oh, look at that. He believes in me.
I know.
He's great. So one thing that I would recommend is if you're an infection preventionist, make sure that you have a good relationship with your VAS team. I harass him all the time. See, he's nodding because I call him, I text him, I call him, beep him if I need to reach him. Whenever I have questions, I'll message him on Teams. Like, literally, he's amazing. They're such a wonderful resource. They can answer all of your questions, and then they can also bring problems to you. So if they're seeing certain units that maybe are having some vascular access issues, or departments or concerns, they can come and talk to you about it.
And usually the vascular access team does not know who the infection preventionist is. And it's sad because we are both fighting for the same goals. Mm-hmm. We have to have a very close-knit relationship to care for the patients.
Yeah. Am I your first IP buddy?
You are. You are. And I've been doing this for 7 years.
Yeah.
You're actually the first IP that I've met in all of my VAS team experience.
Yeah, so see, this is why those relationships are so important. So yeah, he's helping me. He's teaching me all about PICC insertions, and he asks me questions. Like today he was quizzing me. He's like, what is the first vein that you prefer for a PICC? And I was like, basilic. And he's like, good job. Yeah. So they're wonderful. So make sure you get to know them. Yeah. See? Thank you. So it's like 7 days or a week before the test. Still reading. Still don't feel ready. Just want to wait and see. Our way.
They move my browser out of the way.
To take our test, and I'm stressed. He's so calm. Oh wait, safety first.
Not you not having a seatbelt.
I'm being a bad public health advocate. Okay, so Marwell, how are we feeling? I feel like you're very calm, and I'm like stressed out.
I'd say like there's like 20% anxiety.
20%. I'm definitely at like 70%. So we've been studying for this test since like April 5th. It's finally time for us to sit
and take this test. So, this is the plan. We're gonna go. We're gonna take this test. We're gonna do our best, try our best, and then we're gonna come back and watch Mean Girls. And that's like the whole plan for the day. So, that's pretty much it. Wish us luck. We're out of here. Here we are, heading up to take our tests. We decided to take the stairs so that our blood can get pumping. All right, so it is 12:52. Test starting time is 1:30. We're supposed to, oh, these stairs. We're supposed to get started at 1:30. But we have to get here 30 minutes earlier, so we're here. It's going down. Okay, so we are like, how many hours post the test now? It's 7, and we finished at what, 3?
About 3.
3:30?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
4 hours
like
post
3.
test.
So 4 hours post the test. I think that we don't really know if we passed, but I think that the test was hard. He thinks it was okay.
It's okay. The test was all right.
He thinks the test is okay. We gotta go this way.
Oh.
Charles's house is that way.
I don't know where I'm going.
Yeah. Okay, so he thinks the test was okay. I actually thought the test was challenging. I thought the test was hard. Is it harder than the CIC? Absolutely not. No. The CIC is way harder. But I think that this test has more of a clinical component to it than the CIC does. And that part was challenging for me. Like, I think that for those VAS nurses that are used to a lot of the clinical aspects of the role, it will be really easy for them. What do you think?
I would agree. I mean, being a non-nurse IP, there were a lot of challenges behind it. Because there was just some things that we will never have that practical
like heart
application
rhythms.
for. Correct. Catheters, not catheters, arterial lines.
Yeah, pulmonary artery catheters. Like, there's just certain components of the test where it's like I knew information, but I didn't know it as much as I needed to know it. So if I didn't pass, I know the areas that I need to focus on to make sure that I do pass in December. But I think that we gotta do a UE. I think that if you are a non-nurse, like a non-nurse IP, somebody with like an MPH, respiratory therapist, like, I don't know.
I'd say a respiratory therapist might have a better
They probably have a better clinical.
I mean, the AVA study guide, the AVA guide will be your best friend. The CDC, the Joint Commission, knowing those.
That was one of the things that we didn't read. We didn't read the Joint Commission National Patient Safety Standards. We should have read it, but we didn't. We also, like, our facility isn't governed by the Joint Commission. Excuse me. We're governed by DNV, Desky North Veritas, something like that. So we just, like, I know some Joint Commission documents, but that's not my accrediting body. So so we studied really hardcore for, I would say, 9 weeks. The last week before the exam was trash. The last week before the exam, we barely studied. Like, barely. So, I think that if you're, but we studied really hard. I'm talking like 2 hours after work, every day. Sometimes even more than that. On the weekends, it was even longer. 3-4 hours, 6 hours, even some weekends. Like, on a single day.
We read the CDC guidelines twice.
We read the CDC guidelines through twice. We read the AVA guide through once. That's my one regret. Okay, if I could redo my study plan over, I would have placed a lot more of an emphasis on the AVA study guide than I did anything else. And I would have read that document at least 3 times over.
Let's not dismiss the INS standards. INS standards
INS. Yes, INS is like gold. But I feel like that with the standards, there's so much to know. It's literally like 200 plus pages, whereas the AVA is like 100 something. and it's not as dense as INS. INS is like primarily written. With the AVA guide, you have a lot of pictures. There's videos that they link. So even though it's like 190, it's not really, or 150, it's not really like straight 150 pages, because you also got to take out the references pages, and that's probably at least 20 pages. So, how much time do I think you need? I would say minimum, if you are a non-nurse IP, 3 to 4 months. Like, I don't think that with what we did, like, I didn't feel as confident as I wish I could have felt about it. And I think that if we would have had another month of studying, like, we would have felt way more confident. I don't know. How do you feel?
Honestly, I think we were fine.
We have differing opinions. I also get really anxious before exams, so that's also another thing. He's a rebel, I'm an obliger, so we have like kind of different personalities. But I mean, all in all, we'll just find out whenever the exam scores are released, and it'll be that.
Also recommend take a look at the planets. Make sure that there's no planets in retrograde when you schedule your exam.
Even Jupiter's in retrograde, like that was just not it, sis. Like, damn it, Jupiter. So if we don't pass, it's Jupiter's fault. But that's, I think, pretty much it. Anything else for the people?
No.
Just study hard. It's worth it. Honestly, even if I don't pass, like, I'm not mad, because I feel like I know so much more about vascular access, and I can do my job so much better, and I can help advocate for our patients so much more than I did before. So it doesn't really matter, like, if we don't pass, like, it's not the end of the world. You can just retake it. It's just a test. It's really not even about the certification. It's about all the knowledge that you get preparing for the test. That's what's really important. So,
Agreed.
okay, we're out. Bye. All right, hey guys. So, it's September 4th. I got my results, so I did pass. I'm over at Marwell's, so we can kind of talk a little bit about the exam. So if you want to, I'm recording now, so.
What up, people?
So, now that it's all said and done, I definitely think that looking back on the exam prep, I passed, but there was definitely some areas that I feel you really need to focus on when you're a non-nurse IP. And even if you are a nurse, I still feel like there's some very important clinical components related to vascular access that you need to review a lot. And like we said in our previous thing, in the video that we first took when we took the exam, I think the AVA guide has to be like the guiding document that you really focus a lot of attention on. The INS standards are extremely, extremely important, but they're very dense. We read all of it.
Yeah.
We read CDC documents twice, INS guidelines through cover to cover. INS standards read through once. CDC guidelines read through twice. The AVA guide read through once. And then I read a bunch of articles that were recommended through K Coulter's Infusion Knowledge class, the entire K Coulter Infusion Knowledge course. I mean,
she's a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, I definitely think that course is worth it. I think that she had a lot of really good information. I don't know, what do you think was challenging about the test?
So one thing I do want to mention is, as an infection preventionist, our focus are on CLABSI prevention.
Yeah.
So we really put a lot of emphasis on those central lines, those PICC lines, dialysis, you name it. One thing you do not want to skimp out on is going to be your knowledge on arterial lines as well as pulmonary catheters, just because I remember in our tests, at least in my test, there were quite a lot of questions that I didn't even think about studying, because from my infection prevention mind, I was thinking, what is going to contribute to a CLABSI? And I'd never thought about looking into A lines, or studying A lines as well as pulmonary catheters.
Yeah, I also think another thing that was really helpful was we had a vascular access assessment where 3M actually came out to our campus, and we were paying attention to all vascular access devices. We rounded on A-lines, PIVs, like everything top to bottom in our facility. So I really think that that helped me as well. But I agree with him. I think for me, the hardest part of this test was the clinical component. I think if you are a respiratory therapist, you have an advantage. If you're a vascular access nurse, then I don't think you will struggle with this exam. You have to know your guidelines and you have to know your standards, but you're not going to have to spend as much time learning the blood product administration. Like if you're clinical, you've done those things. Whereas for us, we have to just have the knowledge of it because we haven't had the hands-on or the practical experience with it. But all in all, I think this test is a really good test to take if you're an infection preventionist, especially if you don't feel comfortable with vascular access devices. I think that this is one way that you can get comfortable with them, because you are basically being thrown into the world of vascular access where you have to learn about it.
So let's talk about how this has affected our practice when we went back to work. So I could tell you, I definitely feel a lot more confident rounding with my VAS nurses when I'm looking at patients with central lines. I feel like I have a better understanding of what I'm looking at, as opposed to just the basics I need to make sure that our patient is safe. Obviously, patient safety is top priority, but now I know the whys behind it.
Yeah, I think knowing the why has helped me out a lot. And another thing that it has just completely boosted my confidence when it comes to assessing central line necessity, and having the resources to go through the meds, to know about osmolality, to know about the pH, to know the right kinds of questions to ask. And because during the time preparing for my test, I spent a lot of time with my VAS nurses, shadowing them, asking them questions. Like sometimes it wasn't even a whole day. Sometimes it would be like the end of the day, like the last 2 hours of the day, and I would just call the VAS team and be like, hey, do you guys have anything? And sometimes it would just be like, yeah, we have a midline to place, or we have a midline dressing change, like come watch it. So it doesn't have to be this like full out, you're gonna be with the VAS team for like 8 hours for 2 weeks straight. Like it doesn't have to be like that, but even when you do get those moments to spend time with them, it makes a difference. And I feel like it's just made me a lot more confident. Like I feel like I know what I'm talking about now, whereas before I felt like I had very like surface level knowledge of vascular access devices. Now I feel like I have a deeper understanding of them, and I can better advocate for patients. Like, no, there really is no indication for the central line. Like, let's try to get it pulled, having those conversations. And I don't think that I would have learned everything that I needed to learn had I not studied for this test.
And not for nothing, but this test, this whole entire experience really helped me build a better relationship with my VAS nurses, as well as advocate for them. Because prior to studying for this test, really, I knew very little about my VAS team. And that's just because my emphasis has been going everywhere else within the hospital. So I'd like to say that I developed a pretty good relationship with my VAS team over at my hospital, as well as get to see how can I help them. Because the state of the world right now, the pandemic, it's no surprise that we are seeing national shortages everywhere. Mm-hmm. My VAS team is no different. So I feel comfortable going up to them. It's like, I like to try to check in with them every single day. It's like, hey, is there anything I can help you out with? Mm-hmm. Especially those times where I know that we are only operating with one VAS nurse in my facility. Mm-hmm. It's like, let me go help you out, just set up the room, just be that second pair of hands if you need them. And supporting them in the way an infection preventionist could, because realistically, infection prevention is a very diplomatic role. You want to establish and maintain those relationships with your team. And this is one way too that was really helpful with connecting with them.
Yeah, I agree. And due to the pandemic, we have obviously had to redistribute some of our resources. Our infection prevention team is part of the proning team in the intensive care unit because we have a multidisciplinary team. So myself as an epi, I have an associate from the lab whose bachelor's is in biomedical sciences, and then my newest infection preventionist is actually a respiratory therapist, as well as another IP who's a nurse. Because we have this multidisciplinary team, like we've basically been pulled, to help and to support our ICU a lot, as well as, obviously other units. But I haven't been able to, check in with my VAS team as much as I was before the surge. But it's still nice to know that my VAS team is still able to come to me for questions. I had a discussion the other day where, we were talking about the increase in central line days in the intensive care unit, and just talking about how we've really seen our numbers double. So, yeah.
So to summarize, we highly recommend going through the journey because it was a whole entire metamorphosis, so to speak.
Metamorphosis. No, I do. So I do think it's worth it. I think it is. Some people say it's a really easy test. Some people think like, oh, it's a very easy test. I personally don't think it's harder than the CIC test, but I do think that you need to focus on those clinical components. You need to make sure you know your guidelines, but it is worth it. It is worth it. Just make sure you give yourself enough time to prepare for it. I feel like we could have even taken a little bit more time to prepare for ours. So just try not to be in a rush and set yourself up for success. Make sure you have enough time to read everything that you're doing. Obviously, if you're still in school, if you have classes, like this is a certification that takes a lot of time and effort. So just try to be smart about.
Find yourself a study buddy, because the amount of debauchery that we got ourselves into, well, it was priceless in and of itself.
Yeah, we were literally talking every day, and it was a lot of fun to prepare for the test together.
If we recorded some of those.
Yeah, those sessions were wild. It's so funny because Ivan would like see us talking on Teams. We would get together through Teams and like read out loud to each other and share screens and like go over the different types of catheters and everything. But he would just be like, again? Like, don't you guys take a break? It's like every day. But it was a lot of fun.
For what it's worth, I got my favorite screenshot that I still use to this day. For every time she calls me, it's my memento of our time together while we were studying for this test. It's amazing because she looks just like Cardi B.
Yeah, he has a really good picture of me. But yeah, I think if you're looking for your next challenge in infection prevention, and if you are wanting to get a better understanding of vascular access devices, this is the way to go. It's a great certification, and it's really the only certification of its kind. Because, for example, like the CRNI, you have to be a nurse to do it, and this is a certification that has a broad application. For, like, they even have a whole list. It's like educators, infection preventionists. It just has a very broad.
So, live your best lives. Highly recommend doing it. Find yourself a study buddy, and you know what? Just enjoy the ride, because one thing or the other, even if you don't get that certification in the end, at least you got yourself a wealth of knowledge that's going to really help you and
help you advocate for your patients.
Amen.
Right, your patients and stuff.
All right, people.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Bye.